morning, church. I appreciate you joining back in with us in our series, Enjoy. Hope you're having a good start to your day. And I hope those of you who were able to join us for our revival meeting not too long ago, I hope that was a blessing to you. I know the Lord really spoke to my heart, and it was good to see a number of folks come out and appreciate people coming from different churches. And I really very thankful that our folks came and attended and were a part of it, because that's really what my burden was for, is for our own folks. I'm always glad to see other people come from other churches, but my heart was for our church to get stirred up for the Lord. And I hope that you were there and were a part of that, and that the Lord did some work in your heart, and I hope you did some business back with the Lord. We're picking back up here with our study in the book of Philippians on joy, and our series title has been Enjoy, as we're looking at the joy of the Lord and how it relates to us on a practical level. We want to look here in chapter 4 of Philippians, and this is kind of most of the way, I guess I should say halfway through the chapter here. Paul had just made this very strong statement about contentment and his ability to be content, and really more to the point is how he learned that he can be content. And really that's, verse 11 is the thrust of it. Not that I speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am therewith to be content. And so he had to grow in his contentment just like anybody else does. And really that, to me, speaks volumes, because if the Apostle Paul, the great champion of Christianity, had to learn to be content himself, what does that say for the rest of us? All of us need to learn to grow in our contentment and our ability to function in contentment with what the Lord is providing for us. But then he's going to jump into the next, really the last section of chapter 4 and last section of the book of Philippians here. And he's going to be talking about the level of support and involvement that the church of Philippi had in investing in the Apostle Paul. And as we've said before, this church was one of the only ones that financially and tangibly gave to help support the ministry of the Apostle Paul, to help him and to take care of him while he was in jail and while he's preaching the gospel going around. They sent to help him on several different occasions in tangible ways. But it wasn't because they were a rich church. They had a lot of hardships themselves, and 2 Corinthians talks about this a lot. But this is the passage here where Paul is commending them for this. And I want to kind of jump in here, verse 14. He says, "Notwithstanding, you have well done that ye did communicate with my affliction." That word communicate in this context, and there's other places that use this wording, but communicating has to do with materially giving to help take care of him. That's what he's referring to, this communication. Not just calling him on the phone or sending a text or an email. Obviously, they didn't have all that back then. But communicating in a tangible way. They sent to him to help take care of him in his affliction. Verse 15, "Now you Philippians know also that in the beginning of the gospel, when I departed from Macedonia," that would be that northern region of Greece, "no church communicated with me as concerning giving and receiving, but ye only." So this was the only church at one time that was taking care of Paul on a tangible way, on a monetary level. This church was taking care of the Apostle Paul. Verse 16, "For even in Thessalonica ye sent once and again unto my necessity." So even when he was over in the town of Thessalonica, which would have been a neighboring town from Philippi, there in Macedonia, while he was even there ministering to the people there, this church sent an offering to him while he was ministering there. So there were several occasions this church sent money or some other needs as well to help take care of him. This is one of the texts that we draw from when we're teaching on faith promise giving for missions. Is if you're part of our church, you know we have a missions program where we financially give and support missionaries on a monthly basis. And we take up during our missions conference commitments from our members for what we're going to do financially to support the missionaries around the world. And it comes from passages like this, 2 Corinthians 8 and 9, as we're looking into trusting the Lord for what he would have us do to take care of them financially. We know that. But what I want to draw from here is this is tied in the context of him teaching on joy. Remember, the theme of this letter is the joy of the Lord. You say, well, what does that have to do with? What does giving have to do with joy? It has everything to do with joy, because giving is a huge part of our joy. We think getting is joyful, but Jesus taught it's better to give than it is to receive. And it is a part of us, of our fallen nature. It's a part of our selfish nature that wants to get and get and get. But it is a level of spirituality when we step out of our own wants and needs and we step into giving and helping others, even on a sacrificial level. There is a level of joy that we experience from doing that. He's commending this church for this and helping them to have some encouragement in what they're doing and commending them for that. Verse 17, he says, "Not because I desire a gift, but that I desire fruit that may abound to your account." Now, this speaks to a whole nother level. He says there, I'm not asking you for anything, not that I'm needing anything per se, or that I'm begging you for anything. He says, but I want you to understand that as you're giving, this is not just benefiting me here on earth. This is going up to your spiritual account, eternal rewards, fruit that abounds to your account. As they're able to financially support Paul, Paul then is able to survive, and he's able to go out and to do more work for the Lord. And he's able to function in his ministry. And God, Paul says, God will reward the Philippians because of their faithful support in taking care of Paul in his ministry. He says, I want you to have some joy and rejoice in the fact that God is faithfully storing up your rewards, and there's a blessing for you for your faithful support of his ministry on this earth. That's something we need to keep in mind as Christians. A lot of times we face hardships financially. I certainly understand. You hit financial hardships, and if you're not careful, one of the first things to go is your giving. And you'll think, well, I just can't afford to give. Man, I can't afford to tithe. You can't afford not to tithe, because the tithe is the Lord's. I don't get to choose what I do with the tithe. The Bible says the tithe is the Lord's. So that's not even my money. That's God's money. And I don't get to choose whether or not I'm going to give that to the Lord. That all belongs to him, and I need to give that to him first and foremost. But outside of that tithe is my commitment that I made to give to missions. And I want to be a part of missions. I appreciate that early in my Christianity, right after I got saved, it was very, very shortly after I got saved, we were going to Woodlawn Baptist Church up in Bowie, and Pastor Fenwick then at the time, back in 97, had some kind of banquet. And I don't remember if it was a Valentine's Day banquet, if it was some kind of banquet. And but there was an emphasis made on supporting missions at the time. It was all new to me. And but there was something tied into that banquet to emphasize stewardship and supporting missions. And I thought, I want to be a part of this. And I want to get involved in this. And so I made a small commitment, started tithing first. That was the first thing. And then I started giving to missions. And it wasn't much. I think I was giving like $5 a week, maybe even less than that. It might have been like $5 a month. I don't remember. It was a very, very small amount. But I remember I made a commitment, and I said, I'm going to start giving faithfully on a regular basis to missions. And I started doing that. And it wasn't long after that there was a missionary family that was invited to come in and present their ministry. And it was Josh and Joy Wesson that came through. And they were missionaries going to the Dominican Republic at the time. Now, I didn't know anything about missionaries. I didn't know anything about anybody at the time. But they came through. And I remember them giving their presentation. And we actually got one of their tapes. They put together a singing tape. This was pre-CD. And at least we didn't have a CD player, but that we bought their tape. And that was one of the first music tapes that I got, is listening to Josh Wesson sing. And but I remember hearing that testimony, and I remember thinking, I'm being a part of this because I'm giving to support missions. And it was a small amount. It wasn't a whole lot, but my heart was tied to it. And Jesus said, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And there is certainly a great truth there, because since I was investing in missions, I was giving to missions, I was interested in it. My money was in it. And so I wanted to know what was going on with my money. And so I started keeping up with that. As the years would go on, the Lord would challenge me to give more and increase my faith, increase my investment in missions. And I did that. And thankfully, by the grace of God, I've been able to increase my giving to missions each year. and my heart grew for missions. And it wasn't long after that, well, it was actually a few years after that, that God called me into full-time service. I was in Bible college for a little bit, but it wasn't shortly after I started giving the missions that God called me to preach. And I want to be a preacher. And I didn't know what that was going to mean, but I felt the call to full-time ministry. And so I surrendered to that. And God would move me to different ministries and to different parts of where he would have me serve. And I served on staff at my home church, and then eventually God would have me preaching sermons and preaching different things. And after the Lord took my pastor home, God called me into missions. And I know without a doubt that the beginning of that was my investment in missions, because I had a heart for it. It built a heart in me for it, and I enjoyed it. It built a love in me for that. And I can see that here as Paul is commending this church for their financial giving. No doubt they had a heart for Paul. They had a heart for what he was doing. And that was a level of joy that they were experiencing on a very tangible way, on a tangible level, in investing in Paul and what he was doing. I want to encourage you, if you're not a part of giving to missions and supporting missionaries, you need to get in on that. There is a very definite level of joy that you will experience. Maybe God's not going to call you to the mission field. Maybe he will. I don't know. That's God's business. But I know this. If we get involved in what God's doing and we can give in a tangible way, there is a direct line and a connection into our heartstrings between our heart and what God is doing. And there is a joy that you experience in being a part of that. And so I want to encourage you to be a part of that and stay faithful to it even when times get tough. This church went through financial hardships, financial struggles, and yet they stayed faithful. They even increased during their struggles financially. And God blessed them for it. And I know God will bless you for it too. So wherever you are, I hope this is a help and a challenge to you. I hope you have a wonderful day. Join us again tomorrow as we're looking into Enjoy the book of Philippians. God bless.